Most of you have received a copy of a letter that I sent out this past week setting the date for my retirement. That was challenging to do. To fix a date on when my formal relationship with St. Luke's Lutheran Church will draw to a close. It's hard to believe that it's been, well, I'm going on my 28th year now as your pastor. And I'm absolutely shocked when I try to think back on that length of time. It's, on one hand, it's gone so fast. I can't begin to tell you what happened in 28 years. So it is a kind of a sober thing to do, to say it's time for this dance that we have as pastor and parishioners to begin to draw near to a conclusion and to fix that in the calendar and to begin to make plans for what that will look like. And parts of me, to be quite honest, is not ready for it, and other parts of me is kind of hungering to wondering, what does God have in store for me next in my life? It was a prayer of mine since the very beginning of our relationship together when I became your pastor in the spring of 1987, that God would bless our life together and would grant me wisdom and provision to lead this congregation such that all I asked for is it would end up better than, say, when I found it. And I have been given multiple times to think back and to find my heart resting in gratitude for how God has worked so faithfully to answer that prayer. We have, as a congregation, as a faith community, shared in so many activities and events that have blessed us with growth and nurtured our hearts and our minds and renewed in us a deeper sense of what it is to be disciples of Jesus and to help prepare this part of God's kingdom for the kingdom that is coming. So as I was thinking about that today, I was reading in Romans in the 8th chapter, the 28th verse. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I find great consolation in that phrase. For we know that in all things God works for the good. Now that doesn't mean that we've always done the right thing. That does not mean we have always made the right choice. I trust, though, that as people of faith in this community, we have tried to make choices as best we could discern God's will. But the good news is, whether we have or whether we have not made the right choice, is this good news here is we know that in all things God works for the good for those who love him. That has been a source of great consolation in my life. As someone who is only too well aware of his own brokenness, having to work recovery in my own life, something that I've shared with my congregation from the beginning, that the flaws in my own relationships, my inability to rise above pettiness sometimes, I find just wonderful solace in those words. For we know that in all things God works for the good for those who love him. And I have found that to be true in my life. God has brought good in my life, into my life, notwithstanding failures and flaws and brokenness. So, as I look to these next 5 months, what our life will be together, there's two things that come to mind. One is I want to have some fun. I want to enjoy this time, and I don't want to regret it, and I don't want anyone to lament it. we have been truly blessed together. So I want to enjoy it. And secondly, I want to be reminded in ways that can be lifted up, how God has worked for good in our lives together, despite the choices we made, because we love Him. And Jesus has been so faithful to that. So I'm sure over these next few months, I'll have pause to maybe share a few more things about my life in ministry here and the gratitude that I feel to you and to our Lord who's provided for us. But now the clock is set. And as I have named it, we are now in the season of last things. Let's have some fun. And let's never cease to give thanks to God. God bless you. I love you. Keep me in your prayers. I will keep you in mind. And if you have a particular prayer concern you would like me to be carrying in the altar of my heart before God's throne of grace, respond to this email. Let me know. God bless you now. Bye-bye.